We'd like to bring in our CBS News national security correspondent David Martin at the Pentagon, as well as former Deputy Director of the CIA Michael Morell, who's in our Washington bureau. First, let's start with you, David. What is it that you can tell us about this attack?
Well, I heard you asking just a moment before why this particular airfield was hit, and the reason is because it is believed to be the source of that chemical weapons attack. The plane which dropped the chemical weapon on that village is believed to have taken off from this base. So it's a direct response to that chemical weapons attack. It is a cruise missile strike. A cruise missile is basically an unmanned aircraft. It does not put any air crews at risk. And although the U.S. can certainly handle Syrian air defenses, there are also Russian air defenses now deployed in Syria, and this using cruise missiles would be the option which carried the least risk for Americans. And as one of your previous guests said, the cruise missile, in this case fired from ships in the eastern Mediterranean, is a very accurate weapon. So if they performed as they should, they would have hit their targets, which consisted of hangars and fuel storage areas and basically everything of value to the operations of that base. A total of nearly 60 cruise missiles was launched, and each one of those missiles has a warhead of 1,000 pounds. It will be a while, of course, before we know the results. One possible concern that I haven't heard any Pentagon official mention yet is that if this is the location where a chemical weapons attack originated, does that mean there are other chemical weapons stored in bunkers on that base? And if so, were those bunkers hit by U.S. weapons? Now, during the early 2000s, when the U.S. was preparing for airstrikes and the invasion of Iraq, it developed weapons that were specifically intended to strike chemical weapons facilities and use extremely high heat to vaporize the gas. Don't know yet if those kinds of weapons were used in this attack.
I want to bring in Mike Morell, who's also joining us right now. Mike, there are reasons why the Obama administration wasn't more aggressive in Syria. What are those, and why is this coming now?
There was a concern in the Obama administration that there was a slippery slope, that any attacks against the Syrian regime could lead to eventually U.S. boots on the ground. So there was a risk averseness, and I think that that is what led the president to do what he decided to do at the end of the day.
And Mike, when you're talking about creating some sort of a war plan, dealing with Syria, obviously CENTCOM is involved in planning any sort of a war preparation with Syria. What goes into deciding what type of strike to launch and how effective it'll be in a situation like this?
The most important determinant is what is your objective? And it seems that the objective here was to deter the Assad regime from doing this again. As David pointed out, this was an airfield that was related specifically to the attack. This was not a regime command and control facility. So it really seems that this is not an attempt to get rid of Assad. This is an attempt to tell him not to do this again.
Mike, thank you. If you can stick with us as well, I want to go back to David Martin. David, you were telling us a little bit more about what this target was and why it was particularly hit. Is there any sense from the Pentagon as to why they chose to strike tonight and this particular target?
When he was a general, now of course he's the Secretary of Defense, he was always frustrated by the hand-wringing in Washington that would go on every time there was a proposal for a retaliation somewhere in the world. And I think, and I don't know this, but just from knowing him, I think he would have urged the president to act swiftly, that the retaliation has to come very soon after the offense in order to establish that you mean business. Mike would know this better than I, but compared to the deliberate pace that these kinds of operations were examined and then developed during the Obama administration, this operation moved at the speed of light.
All right, we are just getting some information from the radio pool traveling with the president there at Mar-a-Lago. The president says that he authorized the strike on Syria and that there was no dispute that Syria used banned chemical weapons. Again, that information coming from the radio pool that is with the president at his Mar-a-Lago resort. David, let me ask you about the timing. I know that you've talked about that, but in terms of the planning for a strike like this, how quickly would this plan have to come together? Is this something that can come together very quickly, this kind of strike, or is the planning for this something that would have had to take place weeks, even months prior?
When you spend $600 billion a year on defense, you have a lot of capabilities. I mean, the U.S. in this case chose to use cruise missiles launched from ships, but it could have just as easily have used cruise missiles launched from aircraft, or it could have used precision-guided bombs launched from aircraft. I think in the following days we are probably going to learn that there was a very exciting night in the Mediterranean, because the two ships that were involved in this attack were actually quite some distance from the eastern Mediterranean, from being within range of this airfield. And they had to steam at flank speed for much of the day in order to reach an area from which they could hit this airfield. And they wanted to do it at night, because at night you have fewer people about, and that reduces the chances of civilian casualties. And this attack was launched at about 8:45 p.m. Our time here on the East Coast, and that would have been the early morning hours in Syria, but still before the sun has come up.
David Martin and Mike Morell joining us now. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time.